and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Daniel, you've got a story for the people. What is going on?
Okay, so this is a continuation on like this little spat of news with AOC that's just been coming out in the last week. I think it's the last part we're going to be covering of her for a while, unless something else comes out, which is what we alluded to in the previous story, is how she is an immensely ineffective legislator. She's not good at her job. And now, ironically, the video we're going to be showing you is by Fox News, which is very ironic because it's Fox News. And we're going to watch it, and then we're going to chew out both AOC and Fox News on how they're covering this. Without further ado, let's begin.
Effective members of Congress when it comes to getting things done. The Center for Effective Lawmaking ranked her 230 out of 240 House Democrats. None of her proposed legislation has ever made it out of committee. So does that matter to her voters, or are they just glad that she's, constantly kind of screaming their causes from the mountaintops?
Yeah, I mean, Martha, it's a good question. I mean, she won that primary taking on a moderate Democrat that actually got things done for his district, Joe Courtney. So they wanted someone to be a firebrand out there, and I think that's what she's doing for her district and for the progressive cause. I'll note the same report showed that Jim Jordan, for example, is the third least effective member of the Republican caucus, because I think when you have extremes on both parties, that's not where legislation actually gets done. They're just there to throw bombs and to support the left flanks and the right flanks of both of our parties. And I think, again, to meet in the middle is actually where legislation gets done. So Jim Jordan is the least effective, one of the least effective Republicans, because he's out there on the right flank, and AOC on the left flank, the Congresswoman, is in the similar position.
Seems like a lot of people are in those ranks, Tommy, because I'd love to see the people at the top of this list and how much they actually got done, because I don't think it feels like there's much getting done at all on Capitol Hill.
Well, it certainly does, and I think there's definitely a big difference between being an activist on Twitter or Instagram Live and actually doing things for the country. But I have to hand it to AOC because she has been incredibly effective. Just like we're talking about with this infrastructure spending bill, talking about moving further to the left, she's been able to do that. She's got that party wrapped around her finger. She's got Nancy Pelosi wrapped around her finger. Her and the other members of the squad have been incredibly effective with their messaging, and I wish that conservatives would have something like that on our side and be as effective as they are. Maybe we should utilize social media more. Maybe we should be a little bit louder, maybe a little bit more outrageous to match AOC. But the fact that she hasn't done much isn't surprising. But she is shaping that party. She's making it more progressive. She's moving everybody to the left. As you mentioned, people don't recognize Joe Biden anymore. He used to be a moderate. He's certainly not. Now you've got the far left running this party, controlling this country, and AOC is at the helm of that. So she's definitely dangerous in a lot of ways, and she's one to watch.
Interesting. Thank you both. Great to see you today.
Good to see you, Martha.
Thanks so much.
First, I want to...
Yahoo Mobile gives you...
Whoa. First, I want to congratulate Tommy Lauren for trying to put a sentence together. You tried. I'm really proud of you. It's a big step forward. What's she doing? I thought she was irrelevant. I guess not. I guess Fox is like, we need another blonde woman. Come on, get her on here. Talk about AOC. I don't know. They're like, a millennial. Oh, Tommy's always weird. Okay, so here's what I want to take on this. There's two angles to this. First of all, let's start with Fox News. It's really funny that Fox is covering this because Fox's entire pedigree with AOC is, actually it's not too far from Tommy's, which is AOC is the mastermind. She's making everything progressive on her own. Doesn't matter that none of the stuff she's getting is passed. Doesn't matter that everyone in all the parties hates her. Doesn't matter that she's filed under the sway of Nancy Pelosi. She's somehow still in charge. Amazing, isn't it? So... that's Fox News' take usually. AOC is like the boogeyman on Fox News, the same way like Russia was to Rachel Maddow. That's just what she was. It was Bernie Sanders, then it was AOC, and then it kept being AOC. So what's funny about them covering this is their entire point is that AOC is this genius mastermind who's controlling the party, but also can't pass anything. Weird. So Fox News wants to make this a segment that they're not actually going to follow by, because if they had to follow by what we're about to talk about in a second, they wouldn't be able to cover AOC, which means they wouldn't make as much money, which of course they're not going to do. So they're going to ignore the fact that they did this segment and keep talking about her like she's the most powerful person in DC, even though she's getting nothing accomplished. Now, to the other side of this was a pretty reasonable, if you look at the actual methodology of how they tabulated who's effective, it's who gets, who puts up bills, but also who gets bills passed, who gets amendments put in. Like, very famously, Bernie Sanders didn't get a whole lot of bills passed, but he got a ton of amendments that added up to several bills over a period of time. AOC has caused the entire Republican Party to just despise her and everything she's doing by both unfair acts on her and think she's very much earned. The same is true from the Democrats. So she's not in a good position. She's not able to do anything, guys. Let's be real. Again, like I've been saying before, she's not that different from Trump. Ton of tweets, very polarizing, not very effective in actually getting things done. And so this is a reminder that AOC is this sort of like structure that people are falling under, fewer and fewer, let's be real, but falling under nonetheless. But she's not really doing anything. She's a paper tiger at this point. And that's really about it. The only thing that's keeping her relevant right now is that people think she is. The second that people stop realizing that she's relevant, and really also I think once people stop giving her money, but someone else has to take that place. I don't know who it's going to be. But the second that happens, I'm not sure she even gets reelected.
Okay, so I shared a video with Daniel. It would have been great to cover maybe for today's show, but maybe we could save it for Friday or something, or for a Perspectives video, which check out Daniel's Perspectives videos that he uploads on our YouTube channel and is also on our Odyssey channel as well. But, let's first, I want to ask the audience, if you think AOC is effective, type 1. If you think she's not, type 2. But this is something that's concerned me about the progressive movement. And starting Hard Lens Media, I was very open-minded, wide-eyed, and
we thought she was going to be good.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought that there was going to be a real fight for something. But it's one thing to tweet, and it's one thing to even, maybe start a fight with maybe some of the Democratic lawmakers or Republican lawmakers. But if you make enemies, constant enemies, and you have no plan or overall goal, you're not an effective legislature. And the very fact that, again, everything seems to be, at least for AOC's point, nothing but identity politics. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I understand identity politics and why, for a lot of people, it is important. But if we take a look outside, what's happening, everyone, no matter who they voted for, who they worship, the color of their skin, or what generation they're part of, 30 to 40 million Americans are at risk of being evicted. And so far, that's not being addressed. There is a lack of job opportunities for a lot of Americans. Industry and work is being shut down. Corporations, banks, Wall Street executives have gotten away with so many of our economic crashes. No one's holding them accountable, and plus they're constantly getting bailed out. We're going into these endless regime change wars where our infrastructure is falling apart. We don't have affordable education. We don't have Medicare for all. We don't have a universal basic income, and our wages aren't being increased. These are things we want to see happen. Now, there's only one example I have of an effective legislature at a city level, and that's Kshama Sawant. But what happens? See, here's the thing. Here's what happens when you fight the two-party system, be it at the state level or at the federal level. Kshama Sawant is at risk of losing her council seat because the Washington State Supreme Court is basically went on board for a recall. We covered that on our show last week. That's what happens when you are a threat to the establishment. AOC, yeah, she might have started off as a firebrand, but then as time progressed, she got on the cover of Vanity Fair and numerous other magazines and having access to being on all these wonderful news sites, and she's constantly getting her name in the paper, but is she doing anything? It's just her name and her 10 million followers. If anybody were to have 10 million followers, you can organize that army to, I don't know, do sit-in protests, rally, say, hey, here's my army, Washington, D.C., 10 million supporters, and they're not even in my state. This is just a people nationwide who agree with me. Stamp your feet, you'll have a grand army. But so far, we're not seeing her use that. And when we see her constantly do doublespeak, or either that, give money to Democratic establishment people, even before their primary happens, and not even supporting their primary opponents, it tells me, is AOC falling in line with the DCCC narrative of, we got to support the incumbents? She supported the corporate Democrats, the incumbents. So is she towing that line? But the thing is, what did those corporate Democratic incumbents do? They gave the money back because they don't want her support. And yeah, she has a big social media following, but if she's not going to raise hell or say, hey, I'm not getting committee seats, hey, we're not getting $15 minimum wage, we got to do protests, Be an effective commander and raise your army unless were you pulled aside by the Democratic establishment and they gave you all these wonderful treatments. What did they tell you? What did they offer you? Because so far, I'm not impressed. We elected you to fight. And even then, during the election of 2020, 2020, sorry about that, of 2020, when Bernie Sanders went on Joe Rogan's show, AOC raised a crap storm about him even being on Joe Rogan's show. But if you check out that interview in the comment section, you have conservatives and Trump supporters saying, wow, I really agree with Bernie Sanders. What a sight that is.
That should not happen. It must stop immediately. I am AOC. You cannot communicate. Right people on the right, you can't talk to people on the left. Men, you can't talk. It's stupid. It's not a way to lead. It's not a way to do anything. And again, that example still sticks in me as just this absolute state of patheticness. That if you're going to threaten to leave the campaign trail with Bernie Sanders because he went on a show that you don't agree with, that you think needs to be... It's a child. You're a child. You're a Puritan, but you're a child. That's not how you deal with the real world. There are people that don't think the same way as you, and that's just how it is. There are people that I disagree with all the time, but I don't try and cancel or stop anyone from talking to them because that's dumb.
Yeah.
I just talk about what I think is important.
Because let's say Harlan's Media was on, like, had to have 5 million or 10 million subscribers and supporters on social media, whatever. I mean, hey, call up your local representatives, call up your federal representatives. Hey, we need a $15 minimum wage. Like, let's make it happen. You know, use that army that you have, that support.
Yeah.
And she has the power to do this, but I'm not seeing it. And in the video that I shared with Daniel about what's happening in Israel and Palestine,
we could sort of just talk about that. I'm probably going to do perspective on it. That's why I think I'm gonna hold off until next week to do it. But she's asked about the Middle East, and she gives
a word salad,
like a 2-minute non-answer answer. It's really quite pathetic, and I just wish she was the person that we thought she was going to be. I wish that she was the person that would undermine the Democratic Party, throw a wrench in their plans, and try and stop it. But she's ended up being Nancy Pelosi Jr. And the real sad thing is that she doesn't even really have a good, unless she changes her action, she doesn't have a good path forward because she's clearly lost the support of big keys of your Democratic leadership, many donors, etc. They don't like her at all. She's also in the process right now of losing her little keys, which are, people like us who don't have all that much power but can still talk on Twitter and something and vote for her or not. And she's losing that right now. And so we talked about this on the Patreon show the other day. She's basically ending up with a smaller, more extremist base that is attacking everyone viciously for disagreeing with them. And basically, summarized, if you don't agree with me, you're a bigot kind of people, which is just
stupid.
It's stupid.